Welcome to Not Another White Box, the channel that brings you all that's cool, quirky and unusual in the caravan world. My name is Cameron and today I'm going to finally answer one of the questions that I get asked on this channel all the time. Are you wearing eyeliner? No. What's better, the Swift Basecamp or the Bailey Discovery? And the answer is actually quite complex. So we're going to take a look at each model in turn and decide of the two of them which is best. So without further ado, let's take a closer look. Starting with a little bit of an overview on the Swift Basecamp range, because the Basecamp did arrive first. It was in late 2016 that Swift announced the concept, and it was an entirely new concept from the ground up. As you can see already, this looks like nothing else on the market. And they sell really well and they have a really loyal fan base to them, because there's just nothing really like this, certainly from a mainstream manufacturer, definitely from a British mainstream manufacturer. The thing you'll notice straight away is it's got a really curvaceous body shell, so when you're towing it's going to be aerodynamic, it's going to save you a little bit of fuel versus a conventional caravan, and they're very easy to tow. You could tow it with a full range of small engine cars, EVs, hybrids, etc. And that's what Swift had in mind with the Basecamp concept. But the thing that will perhaps catch your eye is that the door, the entrance door to the Caravan, is actually on the rear panel, and that's completely unique in the caravan industry today, certainly in Britain. We have a few other models that you'll see on this channel, things like the Hobby Beachy, Knaus Sport and Fun, that do have entrance doors on the rear, but these are European models. So for argument's sake, it's a very unique design from the British caravan industry. So like I said, it was introduced back in 2016, and the first couple of years of production, they were built in a traditional sense with timber construction. And then very quickly, Swift moved away from that to their smart construction, which is effectively timberless apart from the floor. Swift claim it's impervious to water. There is a 10-year water ingress warranty available on the Basecamp models. So basically the same offering as the Bailey Discovery there. I will say personally, from a design point of view, I think this is such a fantastic looking caravan. It's got so much character and it's so quirky. And over the years, Swift haven't really developed the model that much, because like I said, when it was introduced, it was a whole new thing from the ground up. But this is the 2025 model, and this is the latest version of it. You might have seen Basecamps on the road with orange graphics. These blue graphics were new back in 2023, and they're still styling that out. They still look fantastic, they really do. We've got slightly bigger alloy wheels for 2025, and that's pretty much it for the changes to the exterior. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Look, it's fabulous. The Swift Basecamp range went kind of unrivaled until Bailey answered the call in 2020 with this, the Discovery D4 range. Now, this Discovery name isn't new at all. In fact, it first appeared in the early 1990s. But with this latest form of Discovery, Bailey kind of rewrote the rules on what it is to make a budget caravan. It shares the same Alutech body shell as the rest of the range, which is obviously a very tried and tested method of constructing a caravan. I know more than most. I went with them to the Sahara Desert to push this construction technique to its limit. So if you buy one of these, you've kind of got that safety in knowledge that it is something that has been very, very well researched and designed. But the initial Bailey Discovery D4 range kind of obviously got off to a bad start, because it launched at the February show in 2020, and we all know what happened in March with the pandemic. So it never really got going, and once the pandemic was over, Bailey regrouped, and in February 2023 launched the unofficially dubbed D44 Phase 2, which are the models which we're going to take a look at today. Now, if you look at these online, you might think, oh, the graphics are slightly different, but between the two variants, but that's not actually true. Bailey did a very in-depth redesign of lots and lots of elements of the Discovery based on customer feedback. So I think for the sake of this video, we're going to take a look at each model individually, because actually they all offer something different. They all produced models which kind of rival each other in fixed bed offerings, 2-berth offerings, 4-berth offerings. And as we're about to find out, it's not as easy as saying one is better than the other. So let's start with an in-depth look at the Bailey Discovery D42. The Bailey Discovery D42 is the smallest caravan that Bailey produced, so it's the baby of the range in the Discovery range. And the first thing you notice is it's quite conventional in appearance from the front. We've got these lovely grey sides contrasted with the white front, back and roof, which is something we normally see on caravans at a much higher price level. So you'd be kind of forgiven for thinking that this caravan might be a little bit more than the £20,000 price tag. But I think that's a clever trick that Bailey have done there to make it look more upmarket than it possibly is. Because traditionally the Discovery was usually a cheapened down version of the Bailey Ranger, which was kind of their entry slash mid-range-ish tourer. And for this phase of the Discovery, the D4, they decided to just rip out the rule book and make a completely new body shell dedicated specifically for this range. Another thing that you'll notice is it's got this really, really long A-frame. And the idea was that there would be a storage box mounted on the front, which was available on initial models in 2020, which very soon went out of stock. And Bailey stuck with the long A-frame because there's actually a multitude of things that will fit here. The main one being a cycle carrier. It's good to keep the bikes on the outside of the caravan, because obviously bikes usually get muddy when you use them. So with Bailey, they all go on the front here, but of course you have to watch the nose weight when loading the caravan ready for towing. So another side effect of this long A-frame, which is very kind of continental style but not something we see in the UK. In fact, there isn't another British manufacturer that produces a mainstream caravan like this with such a long A-frame. But as Bailey proved when they did their research with the University of Bath about caravan stability, the longer the A-frame, the better the caravan will tow. And I can attest, having towed a Bailey Discovery model, they do tow extremely well. So if you're new to caravanning, which a lot of people are who buy these kind of models, it's nice to know that you're buying something that has that towability built in as standard through a simple design feature as a long A-frame. But the Bailey Discovery does have an interesting feature, specifically an interesting back end. No carry-on camping jokes, please. It's got this curved back end, which doesn't curve the way you expect it. It wraps around the rear of the caravan, like so. And again, the original concept was that it had a wraparound awning. Unfortunately, they had issues with suppliers and couldn't reliably get them throughout COVID. So at this present time, there is no dedicated wraparound awning for the Discovery sold new, but you'll still find quite a few second-hand ones out there if you're considering one of these vans. So that was one of the big selling features of the Discovery. But as we mentioned at the start, it's got the tried and tested Alutech construction. It's very, very lightweight. It's under 1,000 kilograms. It is slightly lighter than the Swift Basecamp 2. But as we'll find when we take a look at the Basecamp, it does have a little bit less spec as standard, but depends on what you value when you go away in the caravan as to what you need in it for touring. So that's pretty much the outside in a nutshell. Let's take a look at the inside and see what the Bailey Discovery D42 offers. The Bailey Discovery range is really contemporary inside, and that was the trick that Bailey wanted to pull off. Rather than make something that looks like a budget caravan, they wanted to design it from the ground up to look contemporary, different, and I think they've done a really good job of that. Although it's very conventional inside, certainly compared to the Swift Basecamp 2, which we're about to have a look at. It works really well. It's a very warm space, it's a very homely space, and it actually feels like a very large space. So as soon as you step in the door, already past it, here on your right is the wardrobe, and it's a really decent space. You've got some separate shelving, you've got this bit down here below if you want things that are folded up instead of hanging, but there is hanging space as well. And one of my favorite features of the Discovery is the shoe locker. down here. So no falling over everybody's shoes as soon as you step in the door. You can just pop them in that cupboard, which I think is absolutely brilliant. You can tell that a caravanner has thought about this. In this back corner we have the washroom, and it is actually a very, very decent space. There's plenty of room in here to have a shower. You get this nice square Belfast sink, you get the pull cord light. It's got the eco shower head, so it's going to preserve water when you're using it, and it's actually a really usable space. And as I found when we took one of the Discoveries away, I'll pop a link to that above here, you can actually use this as a bit of a drying room. You can put all your wet clothes and boots in here overnight, and there is a heater outlet, so it will all dry out. And of course it's a complete wet room, so if you get any muddy boots in here, doesn't matter, you can just hose it all down and give it a wipe afterwards. So I actually think of the two, this is one point where the Discovery wins over the Basecamp, because the washroom in here is much bigger than the Basecamp. But we'll come on to the comparisons in a little bit. I'm still going to keep showing you around. Midships in the D42 we have the kitchen, and to me this is where it loses a little bit of ground all of a sudden, because it's a split galley kitchen, we would call it, a bit like you might have in a boat. So we've got the sink area and cooker, we've got a 3-burner hob with a glass lid, so you do have a bit of extra worktop space here if you're not using the cooker. But you've got a Thetford combination oven and grill, which I'm a big fan of, because usually caravans fit a separate grill and an oven. And I don't know about you, I don't think I've ever used the two at the same time. So to have this combination unit frees up space below for a much larger cupboard than you would have in a conventional caravan with that separate grill and oven. Again, very practical, it's a nice design touch. But you might notice there's no cupboard here, and that's because the gas bottles in the Bailey go behind the sink from the outside. Fortunately, I can't show you that on this model because it's parked right next to another Discovery model. But Bailey's idea with the Alutech body shell is that they're going to distribute the weight throughout the caravan rather than put your gas and your batteries right at the front, like we'll see on the Swift. So they actually move everything to above the axle to make it more stable for towing. So the gas bottles sit there and the battery sits in this little hatch in the floor just behind the axle to reduce the nose weight. The upshot is they tow really, really well, but you do have to watch the nose weight because you can quite easily not load it up enough. So it's just another thing to consider with the Bailey Discovery. Opposite the main kitchen we've got the fridge, and it's a Dometic fridge. It's pretty much the industry standard for fridges now. It's a really decent size, you can get a lot in there, and that will actually run off gas or mains electric. So if you're off grid, it will work from gas, and if you're on a campsite with mains hookup, it will run from that. And it will also run when you are towing, so the tow car will send power to the fridge, not as effectively as if it's running on gas or mains electric, but it will at least maintain the temperature and turn it into something of a giant cold box, because we all need a cold gin and tonic when we arrive at our campsite. But above the fridge we've got worktop space here, so really you'll be preparing food over here and turning and cooking over here, which I'm not really a massive fan of, but it does work. It's a sensible height. The only place it falls down is if you want to use a TV, because the only TV point in the caravan is on this worktop. So imagine that your TV will be up here, you've lost most of that food prep space. But Bailey do offer an optional worktop extension which isn't fitted to this model, but it folds up from here and gives you that extra bit of workspace here. So if you are considering one of these, I'd say definitely opt for that worktop, because it just makes the kitchen a little bit more usable. Up here we've got the extent of the tech that we have in the Bailey, which is the heating system. It's a Truma heating system, which is, I personally feel, the best one on the market. It's certainly the most efficient and the quietest. That also runs off gas or mains electric, so you can use it whether you have mains hookup or not. Just be mindful if you're using heating on gas, it does use rather a lot of it. Even though it's most efficient on gas, if you're paying for your campsite and you've got your electric included, you want to be saving your gas and using it on mains electric. And this panel here, you can buy an extra add-on kit that enables you to control it from your phone. So if you're out having a walk somewhere and it absolutely chucks it down and you know you want to shower when you get back, you can turn that hot water on from your phone, turn up the heating so it's nice and warm for you to come back to. At the front of the Bailey Discovery, we have this enormous lounge area. These are two huge 6'3" long seats that convert into a massive double bed, and that enables you to sleep across the Caravan or down the width of it depending on your preference. We also get this lovely big infinity window on the Discovery, and some people say they don't really like the fact it doesn't have the side windows at the front, but I actually like the privacy that affords you, and you still get so much light in here from the big side windows and this enormous front window. So I wouldn't say that's a negative of the Caravan at all. I think it works well, and actually when you're sat here, like most people do, they sit with their head wrapped up in the front window blinds. So here you've actually got these pads so you can rest, and it is actually a very comfortable, nice place to sit. You get plenty of storage underneath the bunks, but do bear in mind that the spare wheel is under here. So that locker has an access door to the outside, so you'll probably put your external accessories under that side, leaving only this area for your bedding. And I'll quickly show you. We've got under here your spare wheel at the front and your heating system here, heating and hot water, sorry. So if you've got all your camping gear on this side, such as your electric lead, your leveling ramps, your chairs, etc., you don't want to be putting your bedding where all that is. So you don't have a lot of space on this side. So what I probably suggest is moving the spare wheel onto that side. But for legal reasons, Bailey can't block the access locker with the spare wheels. That's why it's set up the way it is. But if it was me, I'd definitely be moving it over there to free up this entire locker space for bedding, because you're going to need a lot of it to cover this huge bed. Some caravans have like a chest of drawers here, and you end up with a bit of a fiddly bed to make up around the chest of drawers. Bailey is quite traditional with this by not having them. You've just got this enormous bed, and it does make a very comfortable flat bed. We've not got the knee bolsters, which is also the same in the Basecamp range, which is seen as a bit of a budget thing. People seem to like the knee bolsters, but trust me, it makes a much better bed. We would be far better moving away from the knee bolsters and the shaped cushions, just to make making the beds easier. So certainly for me, the Discovery D42 is a fantastic caravan. But how does it compare to the Swift Basecamp 2? Let's go take a closer look. One of the main areas where the Basecamp differs from the Bailey Discovery is, of course, the front locker. As we mentioned, Bailey have got the Alutech construction, and they basically make a one-piece box that's as strong as possible. Swift do it slightly differently, and they have this front locker that sits on the front, and it gives you an enormous amount of space. For loading gas bottles. The spare wheel can also go in here, and it gives you a bit of extra storage space for your various caravanning accessories. So that's just one way in which the Basecamp kind of has an advantage over its rival there. Elsewhere, very sleek body shelf, very different design to the Discovery, but it's just so cute. As I mentioned at the start, it's got character, it's got style. And actually this rear door arrangement works really well. This is the, I think they call it the RVA awning. Yep, that's made by Swift, and sold by Swift, should I say, which is a bespoke awning specifically to the Basecamp, so it fits on the back perfectly. And actually, because the Caravans, the Basecamp 2 is so small, this entire length outfit will fit neatly on a pitch on a campsite. And at first I thought, the rear door, I mean, I loved it because it was unusual, but it works really well because on most campsites, your door is facing your neighbour. So at the Basecamp, you're sat at the back, out the way. So if you're a little bit antisocial and don't want to talk to people on holiday, this is a pretty good arrangement. But inside is where we're going to notice the biggest difference. So let's take a closer look. As soon as you step in at the base camp, you're greeted by this enormous galley kitchen. I mean, this is impressive for most caravans. You get caravans that are £40,000 with fixed beds that have less practical kitchens than this. We've got a really, really neat 3-burner hob that in a very contemporary way sits above the worktop. We've got the same combination oven and grill that we have in the Bailey Discovery. We've got the same fridge as well. So spec wise, they are pretty much on trend. I do like the way they treat the sink in the base camp with the worktop overlapping. But there is a drainer. It's not on display at the moment, but just like the Discovery, there is a clip-on drainer that you can remove if you want a bit more space. Obviously, between the two, this kitchen is way better. To have all this worktop here, all in one area, it just works really well. You've got plenty of space to prepare food, plenty of space to cook it, loads of storage as well. Got these massive overhead lockers, but even like these pull-out bits, the knife and fork drawer and things, it packs a lot into a very small space. And we've even got this little tower of electrics, if I can open it. Oh, it's stuck. There we go, we can edit that out. So if you want to put something here, like an air fryer or something, or a coffee machine, you've got the space to do that. And even just down here below, there are 12-volt points and even more storage for more bits and pieces for the kitchen. Moving into the lounge at the front, and we've got the same 6-foot long sofas as the Bailey Discovery. And again, you can use these as 2 singles or a double. But here's where the base camp moves kind of into a league of its own, because if we move these cushions out of the way, like so, should have set this up and done a true Blue Peter style. Here's one I did earlier. But these sofas actually move all the way back like that, and clip up here out the way. And there's a strap down here somewhere as well. And there are anchor points in the floor. So if you're wanting to take bikes and things with you on holiday, both of these seats will fold away the same, give you this enormous loading area at the front, which is really the base camp's party piece. The downside being, if you're not the outdoor adventure type, you've kind of got this whole setup for nothing, and there isn't actually anywhere to put your bedding other than perhaps in the bottom of the wardrobe. I know a lot of Swift Basecamp owners carry like tote boxes and things that slide underneath these seats. They're kind of going to be on show a little bit either way. So as much as it's a great design for a lot of owners who aren't using this for that function, it can lose a bit of practicality, more so than it gains. But I think as a versatile design that offers you plenty of scope to use this as an outdoor adventure vehicle, it's a really genius touch. And of course, this makes a double bed as well. You can slide it down like so, and these pull out, and this one pulls out to meet it, and you can make an enormous double bed in here. Another new feature on the Basecamp for 2025 is this new control panel, which honestly, don't ask me how it works. I don't know. I am a bit rubbish with tech like that. But basically, I think a big difference between the Basecamp and the Discovery is that the Basecamp has quite a lot of tech in it. So you get the roof-mounted solar panel. You get this fantastic control panel. You can dim the lights from it. It also offers connectivity with your phone. And unless you pay extra for the Truma iNet kit to control the heating in the Discovery is very simple. Now, depending on which way you view that, you might love the simplicity, because let's be honest, in the Bailey, you walk in, switch on and off for all the electrics, lights on and off. Can't get more simple than that. These command systems that Swift favour have over the years had a bit of a rocky reputation. I'm very, very faithful that the new one, I should say hopeful, that the new one is going to be absolutely fine, because it is a completely new design for 2025. But again, depends on how you view it as to whether it's reliable or not. But yeah, that is a main difference between the two models, is definitely the tech and the kit. Another little touch that the Basecamp has that the Discovery doesn't is the external shower. So if you've got muddy bikes, or you've got a dog that loves to jump in rivers when you go for walks, you can hose all that down outside and keep the caravan a little bit cleaner. So like I said at the start, the Basecamp, although might appear basic, isn't actually that basic in spec, but we do notice the price difference. We've got a little wardrobe back towards the middle where you store the table. It's perfectly adequate. It's not particularly huge. Do think the D42 wardrobe is slightly better there, but the washroom is pretty similar in size, but I do really like the fake stone wall in here. I think it kind of elevates it a little bit and makes it feel a little bit more plush. You've got a sink area, you've got a bench toilet, which isn't quite as good as the Bailey Discovery toilet, I will admit, but it works, it's there, it's functional. The shower space is pretty similar. So yeah, it's interesting to compare the two. I have to say, on balance, I do think if you were choosing between the Bailey Discovery D42 and the Swift Basecamp 2, I do think the Basecamp definitely has the edge. For me, it's the kitchen, really. It's a really workable space. It works really well. So there you have it. Personally, I'm going to tell you, between the two of them, Bailey Discovery D42, Swift Basecamp 2, I would definitely be choosing the Swift Basecamp. So overall, clear point there for the Basecamp range. But how do the four berths compare? So we've got the Basecamp 4 and the Bailey Discovery D44L. Now, the Basecamp 4 arrived a little bit after the Basecamp 2. I think it was around 2020 that this first appeared. Probably correct me if I'm wrong there in the comments. I'm just working to what I remember at the shows. And actually, the two Caravans are very, very different, but ultimately do the same thing. Both the Basecamp 4 and the Bailey Discovery D44L are really for two adults and two children. They've both got bunk beds like this that once they're assembled, you can clearly see no adults getting on this top bunk. And if you watched my review of the Bailey Discovery D44L last year, or was it the year before? I can't remember. No, it would have been last year, wouldn't it? Me trying out the bunk after I'd had a few gins did not go well. So not going to relive that today. It's still trauma in my brain about that. But if you're wanting a four berth for four adults, for whatever reason, neither of these Caravans are going to be helpful to you. So here we're spotting a difference between the 2 and the 4. If there are just 2 of you using it, it's not as big of a space to sit and lounge and watch TV or sit and read a book. But again, that's just the limitations of the size of the Caravan. You have to remember, whether it's the Basecamp or the Discovery, they're all quite compact Caravans, and the trade-off is they all tow very well. They're all very easy to get on with straight away for that reason, and you can tow them with a much larger variety of cars than a conventional large white box. But the trade-off is inside it's obviously a lot more compact. But if you're a family that's stepping up from camping, or you've got a small camper van or something, they're going to feel very spacious, and certainly you're going to love the convenience of just having everything at your fingertips as and when you need it. As you mentioned in the Basecamp 2, you get loads of tech in here. You also get the radio included, and we've got the speakers at the front, and that new Swift command control panel is at the back just as you walk in through the door. The kitchen for me in the Basecamp 4 is where it starts to lose ground to the Bailey. So as we've seen in the Bailey Discovery D42, it's got this kind of similar galley kitchen arrangement, except in the Basecamp on this side above the fridge, it's not quite at the same normal working height, it's a little bit lower. Have exactly the same fridge again, exactly the same oven. I do personally love the aesthetics of this cooker. I think it looks great, but not quite as practical as the Bailey here in this compact kitchenette, in that it has the glass lid to afford you extra workspace where you can definitely put the drainer. But you do get, as standard in the Basecamp, this extendable worktop, which makes it much more workable. But for me, for a family of 4, it's a pretty small kitchen. It works because you've still got the worktop over here, But as we mentioned in the Discovery D42, if you put your TV up here, which is what it's designed for, it's where the TV points are, you've lost that preparation space. So weigh that up. If you are a family who like to go away and watch a lot of TV, you're going to be using this kitchen extension quite a lot to make the most of the space. But if you're like us and couldn't care less for the TV when you're away in the caravan, then you can use this to its full advantage. And to be honest, I am nitpicking here. It is still a great kitchen. Now, I won't show you the washroom and the wardrobe again because they are absolutely identical in the Basecamp 4 to the Basecamp 2. It's another way in which Swift and Bailey cleverly arrived at the same idea to keep production costs down and share as many features between the models as possible, which we don't actually see on more conventional caravans. You would think if you've got a fixed island bed and a fixed transverse bed, they would share the same kitchen unit, for example. The industry is not that simple. That would be the optimum way to design a caravan, and we see that clever multifunctional design occurring in both Basecamp and Discovery ranges, so really nice to see. Another thing that we have to consider when comparing the Basecamp and the Discovery ranges is the heating system. So I've shown you the Truma, the German Truma unit in the Bailey Discovery. Swift used the Whale system, which is a British system, and it's effectively a Propex unit underneath with a bit of a fancier control panel, a few other extra features. Can't actually show you it because it's hidden in the depths of the wardrobe. The Whale is a much more compact unit in the Caravan, and part of it's actually under the floor, so you gain maximum space inside the Caravan, unlike the Discovery where we saw you'd lost a huge chunk of space under the bunk for the boiler and the heating system. With the Whale you don't get that. However, the Whale unit for me, the interface is a lot simpler but not as adaptable. The Truma one is going to display an actual temperature that you get in the Caravan to and the hot water, whereas the Whale just uses like this kind of grid with notches on, so you've kind of got to interpret that as you will. I also find in my personal experience of using the two heating systems, the Whale system is definitely noisier. The fan is definitely louder. I could quite comfortably sleep with the Truma boiler on, with the fan on its low setting. With the Whale, it's just a little bit too loud. But I am nitpicking, but it is something to consider if you're a light sleeper and want the heating on. Both heating systems will heat the space effectively, efficiently, and will heat it well. But the Truma just has the edge for me. Another comparable thing, which we've already mentioned, is the storage in them. Obviously the Basecamp is going for a little bit more of an outdoorsy caravan. We have these bags instead of lockers on this side in the Basecamp 4, and you can pop them in here and they zip down like so, and you can access whatever's in here, but actually they lift out completely and you can take these bags home, load them at home, stick them in your car, bring them in the caravan and hang them up here. I think in principle, that's a really, really, really clever design idea. I'm not too sure if Basecamp owners actually use them for that purpose. I don't know. If you're a Basecamp owner, let me know in the comments. Do you love your removable cupboards? I just think it's a really good idea, particularly if you're a family using the caravan and you're wanting to get away as quickly as possible without the kids getting agitated. You can pack all your stuff at home in these bags and just drop it straight in the caravan without having to go through that process of unpacking. So I just want to mention them because it's very unique to the Swift Basecamp range, and I think it's a great idea. But obviously in the Discovery, as we'll see, it's a little bit more conventional. Are we going to see the scores start to level up? I think we might. Spoiler alert, I absolutely love the Bailey Discovery D44L, which was a brand new model in February 2023, and so far has really, really sold well. We actually took this away, the prototype, for a full in-depth live-in test. So I'm not going to talk too much about this, because if you want to see that, like I just mentioned, you can see that video by following the link above, and I'll pop it in the description below. But the D44L for me, straight away, without diving in too much into it, is a clear winner. when it comes to comparing Basecamp 4 and the D44L for many reasons. I mean, it's a similarly compact caravan. It tows phenomenally well, really well. So if you're new to caravanning and you're worried about towing something like this that's got the long A-frame, the very well balanced layout inside, the very even weight distribution is really going to help first-time caravanners get on the road safely, easily, and without the stresses of towing a massive white box behind them. So big thumbs up to the design, but the same could be said for the Basecamp range as well. They're all pretty compact, they're all easy to tow, but having towed both, this just has the edge for me. So we've already spoke about the outside, so let's quickly show you inside as to why this caravan is arguably better than the Swift Basecamp 4. Straight away, you're going to know what I'm going to say, the kitchen. So just like for me, the Basecamp 2 took the edge over the Discovery D42 because of the kitchen, same with the D44L. It's almost like these models have switched places because we've seen the split kitchen in the Basecamp 4, also the split kitchen in the Discovery D42. Keep up. I'm as confused as you are with all these model names. But here in the D44L, we've got this enormous kitchen. It's a really great working height, and it's just got everything in it that you need. So if you're a family of 4 using this caravan, you've got plenty of prep space down here, tons of storage above. I do quite like the Basecamp's lockers that lift out, but I can't deny the conventionality of these lockers in the Bailey just are a little bit more practical, and especially when you're wanting to take a family away with you, you need to keep them as practical as possible. And that's what the D44L offers, is practicality in spades. As we said in our live-in test of this, again, please do give it a watch, it is a great video. It just works really well, and it kind of defies the price of the caravan. There are caravans at much higher price points than this that don't work as well as this caravan. So yeah, like I said, if you want an in-depth review of this model, you've got that review to look at, but let's crack on and show you some quick features. Now, a way that Bailey managed to keep the production cost down of these models is the wardrobe and the washroom are absolutely identical in the D44L and the D42, exactly the same washroom. So again, family of 4 using this, this washroom is bigger than the one in the Basecamp 4, so automatically that's a winner for me. We obviously mentioned the dinette in the Basecamp 4, and I know from following the owners forums that those cushions on those dinette seats that fold are an absolute nightmare. They fall all over the place. If you're a family that's taking bikes away, brilliant, it works really well, but I think most users of the caravan probably aren't doing that. So I would take a little bit of practicality over that multifunctionality in that instance. But in the D44L, we have something slightly different. So we've got this dinette area here that can be used as a single bed, or there's a bunk bed that folds up here. But you can actually take this cushion out. If you're using this caravan perhaps as a 2-berth, this cushion removes and you can pop it there, and this bar comes out. So you end up with a long sofa area. So if you're using this caravan as a couple, which so many people do, personally, I would probably always buy a 4-berth rather than a 2-berth, just so we have that flexibility to leave the bed up and still have somewhere to sit in the morning when we get up and want breakfast, etc. This works really well because you've got this long sofa, and you can actually drop that table and make that area up into a sofa too. So you could actually have one of you sat at this end with your feet up, one of you sat at that end with your feet up, and it works really well. You don't quite have the same flexibility with the Basecamp 4. You could still make that dinette area up as a sofa. Have seen several owners that do that and just wrap the cushions up with some kind of throw or something and a few extra scatter cushions just to make it a little bit more cozy and homely. But that's the point. Your caravan should be able to adapt to suit you. It should work for all instances, and what we see on caravans at this size is an increase in that multifunctionality, which I really love. But that very simple, small little design detail actually swings the favour well and truly in the way of the D44L for me. So if you're after a small compact 4-berth, this is the winner out of the Bailey Discovery versus the Swift Basecamp. So if you're keeping up, that's 1 point each. So we're going to have to leave it to the fixed bed models to decide the vote. So we reached the end where we're kind of having to decide Basecamp versus Discovery, and spoiler alert, looking at the fixed bed models doesn't make it any easier because they offer two very different things. You may be familiar with this already. The Basecamp 3 is exactly the same inside as the Basecamp 4, except it has this folding bed at the front. This pulls forward to form a fixed bed, but again we actually took a look at this on this channel when it first came out. So rather than make this video unnecessarily long by going through all the features again, because like I said, apart from this front bed, this Basecamp 3 is identical to the Basecamp 4. It's an interesting design, and this is exactly what a lot of Basecamp owners were asking for when the Basecamp 4 was launched. Because if you're a couple using the Caravan, it's nice to be able to leave the bed up and still have somewhere to sit and eat, as we mentioned as I was walking around the Bailey Discovery D44L. So this kind of works really well, and I don't think Swift were quite aware when I first filmed this Caravan that this could be configured as a day bed, and I still think they're missing a trick by not giving this mattress a bit better of a covering so it looks a bit more like a sofa. Because actually I prefer this to the 4 personally, because I think this is a more usable space for a couple. If you've got your TV up there, you can both sit on here like it's a sofa, and it's a really comfortable place to be because of the high back on it. It's just really cozy, and it makes the Caravan really, really usable. And obviously it forms that bed, and it still folds away just like the seats do in all the other Basecamp models. So we need to go have a look at the Bailey Discovery D44, which also has a fixed bed. But before we dive into that, it's difficult to compare them because they are two different Caravans. Whereas we've looked at the 2 berths and the compact 4 berths, when we approach the fixed bed of each respective range, it's not quite as clear that there's a winner. Personally, I would probably gravitate more towards the Basecamp, just because we would use it as a couple. But if you're using it to its maximum ability, I think you'll find that the Discovery offers just a little bit more flexibility for family and a little bit more storage. So I'm going to just sit and chill here for a minute because I'm exhausted comparing all these Caravans, but we of course have to finish by taking a look at the D44. So finally we arrive at the Bailey Discovery D44. You'll be relieved to know, as my brain is absolutely fried at all the names of these models comparing to and fro. The D44 is the largest Caravan that we're going to compare today. And this is Bailey's fixed bed model. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because unlike the compact Basecamp 3, the Bailey Discovery D44 is actually a pretty big Caravan with a completely different layout. So without further ado, let's dive in and I'll show you how this differs from the Swift Basecamp 3. So at the front we've obviously got that same infinity window as it's known in the industry, and we've got a large seating area. Now these seats are actually a lot longer than the seats in the Basecamp 3 or 4, so this will make a double bed, but they're not quite long enough to use as singles. But if you're touring as adults with older children, this is a better setup than the one with the bunk beds. So again, it's hard to compare them now because we're really splintering off in a different direction, because it's the fixed bed that's probably the main selling point, because you have an actual proper, we call it the French bed, which is against the wall, fixed double bed that's here all the time. It's one that the bottom lifts up and we've got tons of storage underneath. Fuck, I just broke it. We'll edit that out. I didn't break it, Bailey, I'm really sorry. So we've got tons of storage under there, put underneath the fixed bed, which is a huge advantage of having a proper fixed bed as opposed to the folding bed in the Swift Basecamp. See, I'm doing it myself now. I've said these names so much that I've just lost the plot of what's what. Unlike the Basecamp 3, this bed doesn't fold away, and no fixed bed like this folds away, but it would actually be a really cool design, would it not, if this bed folded up against the wall, or in the same way as the Basecamp 3 folded back and revealed a sofa, and you had all this space in the meantime. Nobody's done it yet. It's not a design that's ever been done, but I think it's definitely something that manufacturers could consider to make these compact fixed bed caravans just that little bit more practical and adaptable to whoever it is that's using it. I would certainly consider buying it if you had a tip-up bed with a dinette under here, so at least if you're a family of 4, you'd have 2 zones to use. But you know, we're into hypothetical now, so I need to stick to the reality of the review, which unfortunately in the case of this review, we are filming this before the show started and they've had an issue with the power to the Caravan. So the bathroom lights aren't actually on at the moment, but we're going to push on and show you it regardless, because we've saved the best till last. In the Bailey Discovery D44, you get a full separate washroom with a completely separate shower. It's not a one-piece wet room, it is a proper separate shower, which is a huge selling point of this model. We've got this enormous space with the square sink, we've got loads of storage, and of course we've got the toilet in here. This area works brilliantly and is definitely the best washroom out of all the models we've seen today. So overall, we're going to end with the question we started on: Swift Basecamp or Bailey Discovery? And as we've seen, it's not that simple. So to conclude, if you want a 2-berth, I definitely think the Swift Basecamp 2 is better than the Bailey Discovery D42. If you want a 4-berth though, with bunk beds and a dinette, I definitely think the Bailey Discovery D44L beats the Swift Basecamp 4. However, if you want a fixed bed, who's going to get the deciding point? The answer is neither. Because I think it's fair to say both fixed bed models from the respective ranges offer very different things, and it's not quite fair to compare them. I think if you are a family who want a fixed bed and you've got perhaps teenage kids and you need that bit more space, then the D44 is what you're going to want. But if you're a couple who just want something small and compact and something that's got a bit of versatility, then the Swift Basecamp 3 works really well. So I can't give that deciding point because they're two quite different concepts. The only thing that links them is they both have a fixed bed or a proper bed mattress in them in the case of the Basecamp 3. But let me know in the comments, do you disagree with my decision? What do you think? Do you own one of these models? Have you got your own experiences to add? Let me know, because people are going to watch this for inspiration, and I have no affiliation with either brand. This is purely my observations as a caravanner myself and someone who's been around these models and followed them throughout the industry over the years. So if you've enjoyed today's video, please do subscribe to my channel, give the video a like, let me know in the comments. If you're going to leave something nasty, don't bother. I've not had my Weetabix this morning and I can't be bothered with that. But if you've enjoyed today's video, I want to say thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.